Hey everyone. If you listened to our Foundations series and were worried that Lexiconned may have become a bit too serious, don't worry. This month we're exploring the origins and stories behind some fun colloquialisms and expressions. And before we begin, I'd really like to thank our younger listeners, and if you don't know some of these expressions, please feel free to ask your parents, and I'm sure they'll tell you how they've used them. So, let's get started. Picture this. A friend has asked you to help them move a couple of boxes, and you think, well, a couple of boxes? Sure, no problem. That'll be quick. The next thing you know, you're carrying the entire sofa, reassembling their IKEA furniture, and you're stuck on a group text about lunch plans for the rest of the week. You, my friend, gave an inch, and they took a mile. But how did this tidy little phrase of boundary overstep come about? Well, welcome back to Lexiconned. I'm your host, TJ, and today we're kicking off our new series, Expressions, where we unpack the curious, colorful phrases that sneak into everyday conversations without a second thought. And in this episode, 7 idioms that we've tied to how we measure the world and how they measure up under scrutiny. First up, give an inch, take a mile. So the phrase, give an inch and they'll take a mile, captures the frustration of generosity exploited. And while modern versions may swap in centimeter or kilometer, the original sentiment remains ancient. You see, the expression goes back to at least the 16th century. One very early variant appears in John Heywood's 1546 Proverbs, where he says, quote, give him an inch and he'll take an ell. Now, an ell was a unit of measurement about 45 inches long, used especially for measuring cloth. So in that version, the leap from an inch to ell was nearly 4 feet. But in our more modern concept, an inch is stretched to the 5,280 feet of a mile. And this saying warns us about slippery slopes, those small concessions leading to large demands, and it's a handy reminder that boundaries are more than just suggestions. Next up, we have by and large. Now, by and large is one of those expressions that we all use to mean on the whole or generally speaking. A simple example is, mammals have, by and large, bigger brains than reptiles. But the origin of this phrase is firmly nautical. You see, in sailing terms, by means into the wind or against the wind, and large means with the wind. So a ship that could sail well both by and large was a good all-around vessel, capable of handling various conditions. So to say that something is true by and large is to say that it holds up under all circumstances. Now, this phrase appears in nautical texts from the 17th century, including Captain John Smith's Seaman's Grammar from 1627, and it gained popularity as sailing metaphors entered our everyday English. And it's a beautiful reminder that language, like sailing, often tacks between precision and poetry. Number 3, probably my favorite on this list, baker's dozen. So why does a baker's dozen equal 13? Was it just a generous bonus loaf, or is there a darker crust to the story? The phrase originated in medieval England, where selling short weight was a serious offense. Bakers who skimped on size could face hefty penalties, even public floggings or the pillory. Now, the pillory was the wooden frame stockade that we all think of where the hands and the head are locked in place. Anyway, to avoid punishment, bakers would throw in an extra loaf when selling a dozen just to be sure their goods met legal standards. Now, one of the earliest known printed references to this is from 1599 in Thomas Nashe's Lenten stuff. But this baker's bonus became known as a vantage loaf or bread insurance. And then the term baker's dozen came to represent that 13-count safety net, ensuring that nobody left the shop shortchanged. So the next time you grab a box of donuts and find a mysterious 13th ring of fried dough, you're the beneficiary of centuries-old legal paranoia. Number 4, in spades. So to say something is in spades is to say it exists in great abundance. You might have talent in spades, luck in spades, or stress in spades. Now, the expression likely originates from card games, especially bridge, where spades are the highest-ranking suit. But it also emerged in 1920s American slang as a way of emphasizing excess or intensity. One of the earliest written uses comes from a 1929 issue of The New Republic, where they wrote, quote, "We got the usual folderol in Spades." And folderol means something showy but useless. So this was a pretty good use of the phrase for the Roaring Twenties. And despite occasional attempts to link it to derogatory slang, there's no credible etymological connection there. But the term in Spades has remained a phrase that deals in linguistic exaggeration, the verbal equivalent of going all in. Number 5, a hair's breadth. This is a phrase that we use to describe something incredibly small or narrowly missed. It sounds metaphorical, but it was actually once a legitimate unit of measurement. You see, in medieval times, especially in texts relating to construction or tailoring, a hair's breadth could represent about 1/48 of an inch. It reflects how even the tiny things could be standardized in a time before lasers and calipers. So when you say someone avoided disaster by a hair's breadth, you're not just being poetic. You're actually invoking a medieval margin of error, even though it is only 1/48 of an inch. Number 6, to the nines. To do something to the nines means to do it with maximum style, flair, or perfection. And we most often hear this phrase associated with dressed to the nines. The origins of this phrase are somewhat mysterious, but it begins to appear in text around the 18th century in Scottish poetry. William Hamilton used it in his 1719 poem, the Epistle to Ramsay, where he says, quote, "How to the nines their parts together suit." So some folks link this expression to the number 9's symbolic connection with completeness or perfection in ancient and religious numerology. Others think it might come from Old English or Norse expressions. But wherever it comes from, it suggests a cultural fascination with the number 9 as a benchmark of excellence. And our final entry today, second to none. To be second to none means to be the best, surpassed by no one. It's a phrase that emerged in the 18th century and hinges on ordinal ranking. You see, in an age obsessed with hierarchy, being first was everything. So to say something or someone was second to none was to say that they held the top spot unequivocally. One of the earliest known uses of this phrase is actually attributed to William Shakespeare. And trust me, he coined a lot of idioms. But this one comes from his play, The Comedy of Errors. Today it remains a favorite in marketing and military mottos, even in personal bragging rights.
The service at this 5-star hotel is second to none.
Because sometimes being number one just needs a little extra flair. Now, these idioms have reminded us how deeply measurement, and the fear of being measured, runs through our language. From giving too much, to sailing true, to tossing in a little extra, and measuring excellence in hairs, suits, and numbers, each phrase carries a legacy of precision, generosity, and caution. Well, that wraps up this episode of Lexiconned, and I hope you found it immeasurably satisfying. If you enjoyed today's idiomatic adventure, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps the show reach far and wide, by and large. And if you liked the episode, don't forget to like, follow, or share with friends. It really helps. As always, Lexiconned is written, recorded, and produced by me, your logophile companion, TJ Martin. Thanks for listening.